Let's just watch this one, because you see my algorithm is already, and they know. Let's just listen.
The identity of the Roaring Knight has been a point of contention in the fan base since Chapter 1. Since their first mention in the game, fans have been throwing their hat in the ring on who they think the Knight is. Whether you're a Rudy Knighter or a hardcore Papyrus Truther, it's clear that one candidate stands above the rest: December Holiday. For a while, I'd accepted that Des was the Knight. It made sense after all. I mean, the mysterious disappearance, the Christmas imagery, the antlers, it seemed like the obvious choice. But the more I thought about it, the more it began to bug me. I began looking into other people's theories to see if maybe there was just something I was missing, but if anything, this just reinforced my doubts. As time went on and I looked into information surrounding the Knight more and more, an idea began to form in my head.
Oops, my bad.
After following the many frayed threads of my unorganized thoughts to their logical end, I eventually came to the conclusion that Azrael must be the Knight. For some reason, many people in the community are very dismissive of this idea, but it's my hope that with this video, people will at least be willing to consider it a possibility. Now, despite this being an Azrael Knight theory, the brunt of this video will be spent explaining why I don't believe Des could be the Knight, as many of the points I raise against Des being the Knight help lay the groundwork for explaining what I think Azrael is. I also feel that it'll help deprogram any pre-existing beliefs people hold and make people more receptive to my ideas. So let's start with what I believe to be the Achilles heel of the Des Knight theory.
I'm gonna put the link
Each chapter
to
of
the
Deltarune
video in
contains
the
a script
chat.
called Unused, which contains dialogue spoken by an unknown character.
Hold on,
For
what do
many
you say?
reasons, each chapter of Deltarune contains a script called Unused, which contains dialogue spoken by an unknown character. For many reasons, much of the community believes this voice to be Des, but this creates a major problem. How can Des be both the Knight and the voice in the code? There are three major theories in response to this question. The first is that the text we see in the code is an echo of Des's past from after her disappearance. This would clear up the need for Des to be in two places at once if it weren't for the fact that the dialogue updates leaves this voice to be Des, implying that this is happening in real time. The voice also seems to address us directly digging through the code in Chapter 4, so I'm not sold on this idea. The second theory is that Des's soul or consciousness has been suppressed and locked away in the code, and that her body has been taken over or possessed by darkness. Many people swear by this theory, and it does sound like something that could be possible in the universe, but as far as I can tell, there is no in-game evidence to back this claim. From what I've gathered, this is more so just an idea the community came up with and ran with in order to explain how Des could be both the Knight and the voice in the code. This alone was enough to convince me to start looking for other viable Knight candidates, but I can see how other people would write this off as just us not having the whole story yet, rather than being conclusive evidence against Des being the Knight. So for the sake of completeness, I'll explain why I still don't believe Des could be the Knight even if this theory were true. The idea that Des has been corrupted seems unlikely once you take a closer look at the Knight's actions. The Knight's actions are intelligent and purposeful, making contact with darkness like King and Tenna before opening the fountains to further their own plans. This is markedly different from other beings made of darkness like the Titan, which Rousey describes as having no consciousness, or Friend, who Pink describes as not too smart. Additionally, despite their title, the Roaring Knight doesn't seem to have any intention of causing the roaring, or harming the Lightners at all, really. They leave the Fun Gang on 1 HP in a situation where they could have easily killed them, and the only place they summon a Titan is in a completely empty church where only the heroes and Gerson, another powerful Lightner, are present. These actions really don't line up with what you would expect from someone who's being corrupted by darkness, which has led some people to believe that Des's body doesn't seem to have any intention of causing the roaring. Other beings made of darkness like the Titan. The Knight's actions are intelligent and purposeful, making contact with darkness like King and Tenna before opening the fountains to further their own plans. This is markedly different from other beings made of darkness like the Titan, which Rousey describes as having no consciousness, or Friend, who Pink describes as not too smart. Additionally, despite their title, the Roaring Knight doesn't seem to have any intention of causing the roaring, or harming the Lightners at all, really. They leave the Fun Gang on 1 HP in a situation where they could have easily killed them, and the only place they summon a Titan is in a completely empty church where only the heroes and Gerson, another powerful Lightner, are present. These actions really don't line up with what you would expect from someone who's being corrupted by darkness, which has led some...
Isn't Gerson dead? Why is he saying this? How old is this video? This is a new video. This came out today. This video came out today. Let's just start over again.
or harming the Lightners at all, really. They leave the Fun Gang on 1 HP in a situation where they could have easily killed them. And the only place they summon a Titan is in a completely empty church where only the heroes and Gerson, another powerful Lightner, are present. These actions really don't line up with what you would expect from someone who's being corrupted by darkness, which has led some people to believe that Dess's body is being directly controlled by some third party. The only person who could reasonably be doing something like this would be Gaster, but he doesn't seem to have much interest in directly controlling the events of the story. Gaster seems much more focused on us, the player, and how our actions will shape the narrative. Additionally, and this is more of a personal grudge I have with this idea.
Hey, listen, if you want me to watch, like, we're talking about lore, Deltarune lore, you can talk about anything you want, but if you want me to watch, like, a video or a theory or something, just put it in the chat, and hopefully I should be able to click on it. And if not, just go to the Discord. I'm gonna put the Discord in the chat real quick.
If Gaster or some other force is piloting Dess's corpse like a flesh mech, it would greatly reduce the individual importance of Dess in the story. It would essentially turn Dess into another image friend, which just doesn't sit well with me from a narrative perspective. In response to the issues with this theory, a third theory began to proliferate throughout the community. People came up with the idea that Dess's soul is fractured, with part of her soul still in her body as a knight, and the other part lost in the code. This idea avoids the problems that crop up with Dess being corrupted or possessed, but much like the previous theory, there's no in-game evidence to back this. Even if it were true, it runs into a number of issues that are hard to brush off, namely the Knight's negligence and seeming apathy towards Noelle, especially in relation to how the Knight treats other characters. In Chapter 3, the Knight has Tenna keep Toriel in a gachapon ball, unconscious, in a place far away from any of the enemies in the Dark World, and Tenna is summoned to check on her multiple times throughout the chapter. When Toriel wakes up, she seemingly has no clue that she was ever in a Dark World. This shows a great degree of care toward Toriel from the Knight, so if the Knight was Dess, you would expect a similar level of attention to be paid toward Noelle, as Dess is shown to be extremely protective of her sister. Noelle mentions a time when Dess hit Chris over the head with a whiffle bat for pranking her, and in Chapter 2, upon scaring her in the mouse puzzle multiple times, even says that Chris is lucky Dess isn't around to protect her. But upon entering the Dark World, Noelle is kidnapped by Queen, who seemingly has no ties to the Knight, and held against her will for much of the chapter, until she even gets crucified towards the end. The entire experience is shown to take a severe mental toll on Noelle, especially if you do the weird route. If Dess cares so deeply about her sister, why would she expose Noelle to all of this? And furthermore, why would she not intervene during the weird route at all? The whole thing just doesn't line up with the characterization of Dess we have so far. That's a condensed version of my thoughts on why I don't think Dess can be both the Knight and the voice in the code. Initially, I was satisfied to leave it there, but for the sake of doing my due diligence, I also wanted to entertain the possibility that Dess isn't the voice in the code, as if this were the case, it would clear up these issues entirely. There's really only one other plausible candidate for who the voice in the code could be, but it falls short in several ways. In Tipsy Phoenix's one ending theory, they posit the idea that in order to make a connection with us, Gaster had to restrict the bounds of his program and reduce the Deltarune world to just hometown. If this is true, and there's a fair amount of evidence that would point to this being at least plausible, it would mean that if Azrael was still at college, he would be outside the bounds of the program and could potentially be lost in the code. While this explanation makes sense, it falls apart when you consider the narrative implications. First of all, this would imply that Azrael was the only person outside hometown at the time of the device's creation, which, while possible, is unlikely. Secondly, Azrael so far has been a complete non-factor in the story, so him being the voice in the code is essentially meaningless. Third, if Azrael is the voice in the code, then what is Dess's motive for being the Knight? If her soul were trapped in the code, then you can at least argue that her motive for being the Knight would be to get her soul back, but if she's alive and healthy, what's her goal? What does she stand to gain from doing any of this? If Azrael is the voice in the code and Dess is the Knight, then Dess must have some other motive that we cannot possibly know at this point in the story. While this is technically possible, it still doesn't explain why Azrael being the voice in the code would be relevant in any way. This conclusion could technically answer the question of the Knight's identity, and I don't blame you if you run with it, but it leaves us with two very important, unanswerable questions, which frankly just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But that's enough about Dess. It's time to talk about... Aside from Dess, Azrael is the only person who is explicitly stated to be absent from hometown. We are told that he's at college, but since the internet is down and nobody can leave the town, nobody would be able to verify whether or not he's still there, which opens up the possibility for Azrael to be in hometown without anyone knowing. The Knight is believed to be operating out of the shelter and is presumed to be hiding in closets waiting for their opportunity to open fountains, and Azrael is realistically one of the only characters who could do this, as other candidates like Rudy or Kara would have their prolonged absence noted by others. In addition to being one of the only plausible candidates for the Knight, Azrael is also one of the only characters who would have a clear motive, bringing back Des. The game establishes that the two were very close, and were even potentially in a relationship, so Azrael going to such lengths to bring her back wouldn't be out of character. If Azrael's motive is to rescue Des, this would also explain Carol's involvement in the whole plan, as she would be willing to do whatever it takes to rescue her daughter, as well as Chris, who would be willing to help their brother rescue their mutual friend. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that the Knight seemingly has a soft spot for Toriel, and the reasoning for this becomes much clearer once you consider that Azrael is a Knight. Making sure she was asleep when the fountain was created, and having Tina check on her regularly throughout the chapter to make sure she stayed asleep and never realized that she was in a dark world, is a level of care and attention that one would expect a son to extend towards their mother. There's frankly no other explanation I can think of for why Toriel, and only Toriel, would receive this treatment. But if Azrael cares about his parents so much to go through this level of trouble for Toriel, why not show that same care to Asgore? Well, for one, Asgore is already aware of dark worlds, and is potentially even where Azrael got his knowledge of dark worlds from. And two, he's frankly not been a great father since Des' disappearance, so it's entirely possible that Azrael simply doesn't like him as much as he does Toriel. Still, Asgore was accompanied by Flowery, an incredibly powerful Darkner who would be able to keep him safe for the entire chapter, a courtesy that was not extended to other Lightners like Noelle, Undyne, and Birdly, who Azrael was not as close with. Further harping on the Knight's relation with these two, the only fountains in the game that the Knight does not open themselves are the Chapter 3 and Chapter 5 Dark Fountains, which are opened right next to Toriel and Asgore respectively. If Azrael were the Knight, it makes sense that he would have serious concerns about his parents noticing his presence, hence why he has Chris open them instead. Speaking of Chris, throughout the game, they do everything in their power to keep us from learning anything about Azrael, refusing to look into his search history room in Chapter 2, and being incredibly reluctant to read his letters in Chapter 5. Chris also does everything in their power to keep us from learning anything about the Knight, thinking of Jockington when we attempt to do so in Chapter 4, and giving us no information when we inspect the Knight during their fight. Chris refusing to open Azrael's search history door in Chapter 2 nets the dialogue, "You get the feeling you wouldn't learn anything," which is similar to the text displayed when Chris inspects the Knight, but Chris couldn't learn anything, further reinforcing the parallels between these two. Chris and the Knight also share many of the same poses, which, given that Chris and Azrael grew up.
See, this is why people thought that the weird route created the Knight. I don't know, bruh, because a lot of people say the weird route doesn't create the Knight. I don't know, man. I absolutely don't know. I just can't stop thinking about the game. I can't stop thinking about this fucking game. Hey, yo, EPG. What are your feelings on Deltarune as a whole, bruh? Toby Fox, Undertale, Mother 1, 2, and 3, the universe. Let me know, dog. Price. I'm gonna just subscribe to him. This is a good video, too. Really good video.
Together makes perfect sense. The two spent lots of time together, so it's reasonable to assume that Chris would pick up on Azrael's mannerisms. The Knight fight also shares many similarities with Azrael's fight in Undertale. The Knight's final attack very closely mirrors Azrael's Hyper Goner attack, and both make use of sword and star attacks. Their songs share similar motifs.
That's true, it is similar.
Both are shown to be able to alter their form, both are aura-farming all-powerful beings who hover off the ground, hell, even some of their sprites look similar. So much information surrounding the Knight ties back to Azrael. Him being the Knight even fits well narratively, which is why it baffles me that so many people would write him off just because the Knight has
I don't know why he's playing the music like that.
antlers. Oh, wait, the Knight has antlers. And they hold their sword like a bat, and their hurt sound is a lower pitched version of Noelle's scream, and the Chapter 2 Dark World exactly fits the description of what Des said to Noelle. Okay, well, I do actually have an explanation for all this, but I will admit, it's probably the weakest point of this theory. Firstly, the interaction with Chris thinking about the Knight in Chapter 4 reveals to us that they wear a helmet, and likely a full suit of armor, implying that what we see as the Knight isn't their natural Dark World form. The fact that the Knight can straight up shapeshift also reinforces this idea. This then raises the question, if Azrael is the Knight, why would he fashion his appearance and aesthetic after Des? Well, I believe he does so to pay homage to her. If Azriel's the knight, then his motive is almost certainly to bring back Des somehow. It's clear he cares very deeply about her, but I would even go as far as to say that he's obsessed with her. Obsessed to the point that she's on his mind at all times. We know that dark worlds are fashioned after the will and experiences of the person who opened them, so if Des is always on Azriel's mind, it makes sense that so much imagery regarding Des would pop up in various dark worlds. The same could even be said for Chris, though to a lesser extent. Azriel, in an attempt to honor Des, creates the city she wishes she could have shown her sister, allowing her dreams to live on through him. In a show of his dedication to Des, he fashions his sword and armor after his memories of her. That's all he has left of her, after all. With his newfound power, he does everything he can to make sure that in some way, the world remembers her, that her friends remember her, that he remembers her, all the while working toward his goal of bringing her back, repeating the same two words to himself.
Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark.
This section of the video covers some of the more speculative evidence that I didn't feel I could fit in with everything else. Most of it is just random bits of text that could potentially tie into Azriel being the knight or just a series of loose associations, but some of them require a bit of imagination, to put it lightly. So here's a big speculation warning before I get into these ideas. The first point ties back to the whole Azriel is mimicking Des thing I was just talking about. In Man Country, one of the Ruden states that copies are monochrome. In this case, explicitly referring to monochrome photocopies from a printer, which are typically black, white, and gray. While it would be easy to write this off as just a story about Chris photocopying aces to cheat at card games, I do still think that it's interesting that the knight is the only major character with a color palette that matches this description, potentially implying that the knight is Azriel copying Des rather than being Des herself. I know this sounds like a stretch, but that's why it's in the speculation part of the video. In Chapter 4, upon entering the secret room with the Root's prophecy, you can interact with the bookshelf, and doing so nets the following dialogue. And so wept the fallen star, making rivers with its tears. Then, slowly, from the bitter water, something grew. It looked like glass. Given the Shadow Crystal's association with glass, and the fact that we see the knight crying before their fight, many people associate this text with the knight. In Chapter 3, there's a rare line of dialogue you can get from the Ribic enemy that reads, "A lost and lost and lost girl," as well as, "A crying and crying and crying boy," which almost certainly refers to Des and Azriel respectively. This coming from an enemy in the Chapter 3 Dark World, which takes place in the Dreamer home, with a knight. In Chapter 3, there's a rare line of dialogue you can get from the Ribic enemy that reads, "A lost and lost and lost girl," as well as, "A crying and crying and crying boy," which almost certainly refers to Des and Azriel respectively. This coming from an enemy in the Chapter 3 Dark World, which takes place in the Dreamer home, a place both Des and Azriel spent lots of time in, lends further credence to this idea. This would establish that the theme of crying, which Chapter 4 ties to the knight, is also connected to Azriel, drawing another strong parallel between the two. In Chapter 5, Sham tells us that shadow crystals contain the power of lost dreams and are formed when a strong attachment is broken. As such, Azriel losing Des could potentially explain how he became familiar with the darkness and dark fountains. Dreams in general are also a theme very strongly tied to Azriel's character, at least in Undertale. In Chapter 4, if you wait in the kitchen of the holiday house long enough, you can hear Chris play on the piano. They cycle through 8 songs, 5 of which previously appear in the game, like Quiz and Lancer's Waltz, 2 of which haven't appeared in the game yet, and 1 appears in Chapter 5 as a theme in Pink Shop. Chris being the one who wrote the theme for Pink Shop could imply that they also wrote music for characters earlier in the game, likely as a child while playing Pretend with Azriel, long before the Dark Fountains ever appeared. Many of the themes in the Dark Worlds draw on things from Chris's and Azriel's childhood, and assuming these songs predate the Dark Worlds, the only way they could appear is if someone who was familiar with these songs, like Azriel, opened the Dark Fountains. Rousey tells us that whoever opened the Chapter 4 fountain had to have had solid enough memories of Gerson while he was alive to bring him back. We know that Azriel was very religious and was even part of the church choir, so it's reasonable to assume he spent a good deal of time around Gerson, and may have even been using him as a test dummy to see if Dark Worlds could resurrect people. This could also explain why Azriel would be kidnapping people closely tied to Des' disappearance, as if memories are needed to bring someone back, he would want to have as many people as possible with memories of Des present to ensure that she would be brought back with no issue. And that's the last of my thoughts on the matter. Even if you don't believe that Azrael is a knight, I hope I've at least given you something to seriously think about. If you found this idea compelling, I'd appreciate if you shared it around so more people can hear the theory. Thanks for watching.
Yo, man. Alright, let's find another video. Hold on, let's actually filter in the safe out there. This is kind of old. Let's go to, hold on, I like this guy though. Yeah, let's just listen. Let's just listen to this.
YouTube Premium is
What type
ad-free
of shit is
YouTube
this?
and the YouTube
Yo,
Music
what
app
up?
all together. One subscription, 2 apps.
Sham is
You talking about on Power World? I don't know if I'm ready to play multiplayer on Power World, bruh. I don't know if I can play it right now. But yeah, go to my Discord is a folklore legend.
without a doubt one of the most intriguing Darkners of them all. Their aura inevitably reminds us of Gerson in Undertale, an old shopkeeper who seems to know more than the actual rulers of their world. They not only know the glittering past of the Card Kingdom, but they also witnessed the exact moment of its corruption, and were capable of locking away Jevil with their own hand. But their dominion doesn't end at the borders of their dark world. Sham knows more than they let on. They know the very essence of the night. They predict the future, and they understand the mystery of the shadow crystals. At first glance, they're just a plush cat brought to life, an old toy patched up by someone who valued them enough to reconstruct their shattered face. But beneath those stitches, this Darkner hides a history that is darker yet darker. Their dialogue, their merchandise, their appearance, and even their scar hide one of the biggest secrets in Deltarune. Sham is not just another NPC, and that is why today we are going to explore the theory that this patched up cat is actually the only entity capable of staring into the abyss, letting the abyss stare back, and keeping their sanity long enough to tell the tale. Today we ask, is Sham the true identity of Gaster? Chapter 1: The Magician. To many, Sham is simply the game's shopkeeper. That static NPC you visit to buy healing items or sell off the junk cluttering your inventory. Their shop, full of knickknacks and dust, conveys a sense of antiquity, of things that have been forgotten, and they seem to be part of that oblivion. In the light world, they are a worn-out cat plushie with a button for an eye, and shams that betray years of wear and tear. But you only need to pay attention to their first words in the dark world to understand that Sham isn't just there to trade. They are there, waiting for the end, as they tell us with unsettling calm.
Over the years, I've collected odds and ends. Of course, I've no attachment to any of it. It's just a hobby of mine. Around here, you learn to find ways to pass the time, or go mad like everyone else.
Sham wasn't always a vendor of junk. Before chaos consumed the Card Kingdom, they held one of the highest positions in the hierarchy. They were the court magician, and they weren't alone. They had a partner, an equal with whom they balanced the scales of power, Jevil. The relationship between Sham and Jevil is fundamental to understanding the tragedy of this world. They were friends, or at least the only ones who could keep up with each other's games. But everything changed when Jevil met a stranger. From that meeting on, the jester began to lose his mind, speaking of how the world was just a game and everyone was merely a participant. It was Sham, his only companion, who was forced to perform the hardest act of their life, locking Jevil away forever in a subterranean cell. However, Sham confesses that while they locked away Jevil, they couldn't lock up his ideas. There is a specific line Sham tells us that should set off alarm bells for any veteran of this universe.
Since that time, the strange words he said have stuck inside my cotton, and my view of this world has become darker yet darker. Reflecting on these old memories, I think perhaps I miss playing games with him, and I wonder if I hadn't been asked to lock him up, would I have found a little more purpose in my life.
That choice of words is no accident. Sham lives with the trauma of having imprisoned their friend, but also with the burden of knowing that perhaps the madman was right, and perhaps they have already lost their purpose.
You know, I just realized that that's probably a foreshadowing of the weird route, because he's talking about the potential route he could have took with Jevil if he would have just killed everybody and saved Jevil. And I guess the player would be able to do that. But he thinks about it. That's crazy. I didn't think about that. Hey, yo, what up, yo? Shout out to Egypt, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Ancient Kemet and all that. East Africans. You know what I'm saying? What up? But yeah, man, like, it kind of seems like that's kind of a foreshadowing of Sham speaking about the weird route. He's actually talking about a weird route he could have took. That's crazy.
So you are the heroes who are going to seal our fountain. Ha! Good luck. It makes no difference to me. Neither light nor dark hold a future for a darkner in my condition.
Their environment reflects this hopelessness. Their shop, which they punningly call the Seep, is cluttered with objects they themselves despise. Curiously, there are elements from others like Yoki from Temi Cheng's game Dweller's Empty Path. We see cards, and among them one that is very peculiar. Glitched, perhaps belonging to Spamton, and when we try to buy something, they tell us,
"Take your time. Ain't like it's better spent."
They sell what they call junk. Dark candies, old weapons, but if we look past the dust of the shop and focus on Sham themselves, the image of the harmless vendor begins to crumble. Their design is unsettling. They are a lavender
Hey, yo, listen, if there's a video that you want me to watch, just let me know. You know what I'm saying? Because all I've been doing for the past 24 hours is listening to Deltarune lore, dog. That's it. That's it.
plush cat with a right eye made of a sewn-on orange button, while the left is an empty socket. Toby Fox has mentioned that their design is inspired by traditional wizards, but there is a detail we don't see in-game, but rather in the official merchandise and concept art. On the official Fangamer plush and in the concept art, Sham isn't holding just any staff. What they carry in their hand is a Sham Ripper. Sham is a being made of fabric and stitches, yet their weapon of choice is a tool designed specifically to cut threads and undo stitches that have already been sewn. Interestingly, the Undertale cross-stitch book contains a description for this item, Sham Ripper, a tool designed to allow for the easy removal of stitches. Its small, curved blade cuts through the thread, while its blunt or ball-tipped point protects your fabric, essential for ripping out a misaligned stitch if you're too far along to simply pull the threads back out, once wielded by Sham in combat. Sham is not a pacifist by choice. They are a retired war veteran, someone who had the power to unstitch, even if things had already gone too far. Now they just sit in a chair, their mouth partially sewn shut in a gesture of eternal silence, watching as the Lightners try to save a world they consider doomed. This physical duality, one eye that sees and another that stares into nothingness, could be more than an aesthetic trait. It could be the mark of someone who has seen too much, which leads us to ask, is this nihilism a mask to hide the fact that they are the only one who truly understands the rules of the game? Because for a resigned, simple plush toy, they know way too much about what happens outside their shop. Chapter 2.
Is that Deltarune? Is that a Deltarune video?
If Sham were just a retired magician, their story would end there. But what is truly unsettling about this character is why the hell they know so much. In most RPGs, we accept that shopkeepers know what items we have. It's a game mechanic, but in a Toby Fox game, mechanics are usually part of the narrative, and Sham seems to have a direct awareness of the user interface. In the early versions of Chapter 1, the game didn't register that you received the Shadow Crystal upon defeating Jevil, until the release of Chapter 2, when Toby updated the battle to drop the item upon victory. But regardless of when the player got it, when visiting Sham's shop in Castletown, they tell us,
Oh, what's that? It seems like he gave something to you. That's right. You must not have noticed
I'ma watch it, bro.
That crystal.
I'ma watch
It's
it.
nearly invisible, but you've been holding it this entire time. Here, I'll take it off your hands and appraise it.
the most intriguing part happens if you get Spamton's Shadow Crystal, but you didn't get Jevil's.
What is that? It appears you have a shadow crystal. Unfortunately, I believe that you are missing one from your previous adventures. But are you sure? Are you sure you didn't defeat that clown? Perhaps you just haven't remembered that you had yet. That's right. As long as you ever defeated that enemy in the past, then perhaps even now that crystal might turn up somewhere close. Perhaps.
So let me ask you this. I'm gonna ask you a question, because I beat Jevil before Chapter 2 came out, so I never went back to go get the crystal that was supposed to drop. Oh, I forget how many crystals I got, but I'm missing Chapter 2 and Chapter 3's crystal. Wait. Yeah. 2 and 3. I'm missing 2 and 3 crystals, yo. It's actually sad because I didn't know. Like, I tried to find them, but I couldn't find them. Like, I didn't do the Snowgrave route and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? I didn't fight Spamton, bro. My bad.
Sham is aware of the
I
player's
wanted to.
ability to use save files from previous chapters. They know that just by defeating Jevil, saving the game, and reloading in Chapter 2, we will be able to obtain that key item. But their knowledge doesn't end there. At the end of Chapter 2, Sham gives us a warning that, at the time, seemed like simple ambient commentary.
By the by, it's growing late, isn't it? You should hurry home once you finish your business here. You don't want to get caught when the sun goes down.
Sham knew that Chapter 3 would take place at night in Toriel's house. They knew the darkness of the real world would affect our adventure. They were reading the script for the next episode before it even happened. But the definitive proof of their omniscience comes from Chapter 4. Sham has a very specific reaction depending on our performance against the main antagonist, the Roaring Knight. If we lose, Sham comments,
If only you had the Shadow Mantle. Your luck might have gone another way.
but if we win, their reaction is total shock.
What? You got the Shadow Crystal? And without even using the Shadow Mantle? You three, you might be even sicker than that old clown. Oh, it must have been a terrific match. If only I could have witnessed it.
The only logical explanation is that Sham isn't watching the fight. Sham is reading the flags of our save file. They know which variables were triggered, victory or defeat, and react to them. Just like Gaster, who seems to operate from outside the boundaries of the game, Sham demonstrates an awareness that breaks the fourth wall. And if they can read our fate, does that mean they are also trying to change it? Chapter 3, Gaster. Until now, we've accepted that Sham is a cat. But if we look closely at their design and compare it with the only image we have of W.D. Gaster, the Mystery Man sprite, the similarities are quite interesting. Gaster has a crack running up from his right eye and another running down from his left. His face seems to be melting or fragmenting. Sham reflects the same damage. They have a clear sewn tear running down from their right eye. The left is an empty socket, with no protruding cracks, but a marked expressive line right beneath it. It's as if Sham wore a softened version of Gaster's deformed face, as if someone had tried to stitch together a vessel to contain an essence that was breaking under the same pressure that fragmented Gaster. Furthermore, when speaking of Jevil's madness, Sham explicitly says,
And my view of this world has become darker yet darker.
This is Gaster's signature. It is entry number 17. For a secondary NPC to recite the exact words of the man who was shattered across time and space is a statement of intent from Toby Fox. But the most fascinating connection was lost in translation. In the Japanese version of Deltarune, Sham uses the personal pronoun Atashi. Western fans thought this was just to denote that Sham was of ambiguous gender, but the reality is deeper and fits perfectly with their role. Historically, in Edo period Japan, Atashi was the pronoun used by merchants and artisans of the working class. Here lies the brilliant contradiction. Sham was the court magician, a high-ranking royal official. They should speak with the formality of a Watakushi or a Wade. The fact that they use Atashi tells us that Sham has suffered a degradation, not just physical, broken and repaired, but social. They have adopted the mask of the simple shopkeeper, using the language of commoners to go unnoticed. Sham left their post alongside royalty to pretend to be just another NPC. Gaster also left his post as the royal scientist, fell into his creation, and was scattered. Sham believes that nothing matters and that the fate of the world is inevitable. The question is, are these just similarities, or is Sham something more? The Gonner's theory suggests that when Gaster fragmented, his pieces fell into different realities. If the depths are the equivalent of the void in Deltarune, is it possible that Sham is not Gaster in his entirety, but a part of him that managed to cling to a physical body? Perhaps Sham is not the man who speaks in hands. Perhaps Sham is a reflection of what remained of his consciousness, a knowledge so shocking that it changed Sham forever. Chapter 4: The Depths. If we accept that Sham is a fragment, or at least an echo of Gaster following his incident in the core, then their location and purpose makes sense. Because as strange as it sounds, to understand Sham, we have to look at the water. At the beginning of Deltarune, in the Gonner Maker sequence, the background isn't solid darkness, it's waves. It's a dark ocean. The depths are the equivalent of the void in this universe. And curiously, the dark fountains flow like water, and inhabitants like Onion-san hear songs coming from the deep. Sham appears to be the guardian of this knowledge. We know that if too many fountains are opened, the roaring will occur. And in the climax of chapter 4, we saw that this is not a distant legend. We witnessed the exact moment the roaring night caused the Titan to emerge from the fountain. The darkness took physical form, and upon its face appeared a shield in the same shape as the save point, seemingly impossible to destroy. And this is where Sham becomes the key piece. They are the only Darkner who does not fear this fate. Why? Sham claims that in the past, Lightners and Darkners lived in harmony, that they viewed Lightners as gods who created them, protected them, and gave them purpose, until they were locked away and never returned. Sham knew what existence meant without the Lightners. Perhaps that is why they survived contact with Gaster. Perhaps that is why they can use a Sham Ripper without undoing themselves. Their nihilism is born from knowing that the roaring is inevitable, but the most revealing detail was given by Toby when he teased a couple of Sham's lines for chapter 5 earlier this year.
Chris, I suppose I owe you an explanation about all this. No, you no doubt have realized yourself by now. The shadow crystals are far more than mere pieces of glass. In actuality, they contain a certain power. You could call this the power of will. No, perhaps will isn't right. The power they contain is...
The sentence remains incomplete, but the community
Determination.
seems to have reached a consensus. Determination. Until now, that way of speaking about save points hadn't surfaced explicitly, unlike an Undertale where it is a key component. Undyne the Undying is the perfect example. She manages to hold on after a mortal blow, her eye glowing, her body clinging to life until it melts, unable to contain so much power. Determination is, literally, the capacity for determination, to undo that which is terminated. And this is where Gaster's echo resonates most strongly. In Undertale's True Lab, we find the blueprints for the DT extraction machine, a device designed by the royal scientist to extract this substance. Gaster tried to extract it with technology. Sham is collecting it with cunning. Both seek to accumulate the only substance capable of altering fate. Sham is collecting the shadow crystals not out of greed, but because they are pieces of that pure reality. They tell us that with them, they could make something incredible. And what if that something is an ark, a shelter against the Titan we just saw emerge, or perhaps a way to stitch reality back together to recover a save file fragmented in time? But the discovery that brings it all full circle isn't found in the dialogue. It's hidden deep within the game's code, which, coming from Deltarune, is hardly a surprise.
You might not believe the United States is ever gonna win at all.
I close my eyes, then I drift
But we will.
into the magic night.
How can I be so sure? Because he is.
Data miners have unearthed an unused item called the Pure Crystal, with a description that reads, "The shadow purified by the cat." The cat obviously refers to Sham. Thanks to this, we now know they don't just collect darkness, they have the ability to purify it. This crystal is the secret ingredient needed to forge the Twisted Sword, a weapon crafted by fusing the crystal with the Thorn Ring. In fact, when we hand the third shadow crystal over to Sham, he says something that suddenly makes a lot more sense.
Now you've got 3. Only 2 more and we should have enough to make something I think you'll quite enjoy.
Here's the thing, the Thorn Ring is exclusive to the Weird Route. This implies that the something incredible Sham promises isn't the reward for those who took the pacifist path, but for those willing to break the game, manipulating Noelle and destroying everything in their path. So if you think about it, this pure crystal would shatter Deltarune's golden rule. The game insists that your choices don't matter, yet here is Sham handing you the materials to forge a sword capable of severing a fate carved in stone, an ending he once viewed as inevitable, but one that might now be shattered thanks to our twisted determination. Ultimately, Deltarune has drilled it into our heads that there is only one ending, that we cannot choose who we are. But Sham, the old shopkeeper, seems to be a glitch in the system. He's the only one who remembers things he shouldn't, the only one who sees the invisible, and the only one who speaks with the words of a forgotten ghost. We don't know if Sham is literally W.D. Gaster, a fragment of his soul, or simply an old colleague carrying on his legacy, but he clearly shares striking similarities with the figure theoretically representing Gaster, and he seems to be finishing a job that Gaster left half done. But this leaves us with one final, unsettling question. If shadow crystals are the source of a power capable of altering reality, where exactly do they come from? Are they mere magical items, or are they the remnants of other destroyed worlds? Are they truly made of determination, or is it a different power entirely? The true nature of these crystals deserves its own story, and that's exactly what we'll cover in the next video. Just a heads up, like Sham, they aren't what they seem at first glance. For now, do you think the Twisted Sword will be necessary to defeat the Titans? Is Sham manipulating us to unleash something even worse? And what are the shadow crystals? Let me know in the comments. I always read them.
The temper.
Anyways, I think there is kind of the motif we know what the Even if you haven't played Deltarune, there's a chance you've heard of the mysterious freedom motif. This enigmatic motif appears in so many tunes in the Deltarune soundtrack, and yet, despite seemingly increasing in importance in every chapter, it's kind of the motif we know the least about. After spending countless sleepless nights poring over the soundtrack, I found some hidden examples, made some predictions, and come up with a few theories for what the freedom motif really is, supported by harmonic theory and motivic analysis. I will unfortunately not have the time to talk about my theory that the freedom motif is actually Birdley's theme, which I have affectionately dubbed the Freebird theory. Before we take a look at the freedom motif, first a word from today's sponsor. This video is brought to you by boot.dev. Have you ever wanted to make a game like Toby Fox? I know I have at some point, but the most daunting thing has always been learning how to code. But it doesn't have to be that way. With boot.dev's curated courses, you can learn how to code in a way that is educational and engaging. The lessons are all very practical, teaching anything from actively fixing bugs to using bitwise and operators, all using the backdrop of a fictional fantasy video game. You can choose from a variety of different programming languages, as well as more specific courses. I'm a huge fan of this course that teaches you how to build a Pokédex in TypeScript. And I have been having a lot of fun. I've been taking the Python course in boot.dev for a few months now, and Alright, so what is the freedom motif? Why don't I just play it? This motif is part of a larger melodic phrase from a song we'll see in a second, but first a spoiler warning for Deltarune chapters 1 through 4.
Yes.
Alright, so the prevailing theory and reason for the name is that the freedom motif is the theme of the secret bosses, the optional guys you fight near the end of each chapter. During most of these fights, there is a common theme of freedom, hence the name. Jevil views himself as free through chaos despite being imprisoned. Spamton wants to be free from capitalism or something by stealing Chris's soul and ascending to heaven, but in the end even his neo-body was bound by strings. And Gerson is green. Outside of one weird context, which we'll talk about later, the freedom motif in its purest form only appears in the secret boss battle themes, or in some cases, themes for the secret bosses before you fight them. We can hear it in Spamton Neo's theme from Chapter 2. Hammer of Justice from Chapter 4. And, of course, the melodic phrase in its entirety in Jevil's theme from Chapter 1. The motif is contained within the first two measures. Something interesting about this is the relatively small note pool, using only 3 distinct notes, the 3rd, 2nd, and 7th of our key. Toby's generally pretty good at writing these snappy, efficient motifs, but I can't think of any other non-ostinato motif in Deltarune that uses as limited a set of notes as this. Doesn't seem to be thematically interesting, but it is cool nonetheless. The full melodic phrase is 8 measures long, with a similarly efficient development. The first 2 bars establish our motif. Bars 3 and 4 develop it, keeping the same rhythm but flipping our contour upside down, making a cute little valley this time. Bar 5 takes our motif and offsets it forwards by an 8th note, giving a slightly different flavor of our motif, which then goes into new material for the following 3 measures. Super strong and cohesive development of the main idea. It kind of disintegrates with each repeat, which works really well with Jevil's themes of chaos, chaos. Harmonically, all 8 chords are distinct, save for the repeat of our flat 6, the E. Gives a rather nice symmetry.
I mean, in Deltarune, there's like a bunch of different games. There's a bunch of different games in Deltarune. It's kind of crazy, man. Everything's just spiraling out of control.
To the phrase. I also like the restraint in using the weaker minor 5 in bar 4, and then giving us the stronger 5 dominant 7 at the end.
That's like a music video, though. We need lore of the game. It's too music. It's like too much music going on. Wait. Still life. Back rooms. This is new. 282 views.
The who's, what's, where's, and whys of December holiday have been a hot topic of discussion in the Deltarune community. We basically just went a whole chapter without her being mentioned at all. So the question on everyone's mind is, what's up with her? Like, most people think she's the knight, sure, whatever, but what is her deal? Like, who is she? We've discussed these topics endlessly for years, and really we still lack a concrete answer. This girl hasn't
about him and what he's doing within
We
the
can listen to
narrative
this.
of this
We'll
game.
listen to this.
You do not stop seeing him. I began doing research
Let's
for
just start it over.
device_friend. If you are in the know about the current goings-on of Deltarune and its community, this name just sent a chill down your spine. Toby Fox is someone who has always had an affinity for hiding spooky little characters and Easter eggs in his games, whether it be the Goners shown in Undertale, the ever-elusive W.D. Gaster, or other strange occurrences. These phenomena are all over these games. None, though, truly compare to the absolute nightmare that is device_friend. This guy right here, this silly little smiley face with yellow and pink eyes, I swear he's a cognito hazard. Once you learn about him, like properly learn about him and what he's doing within the narrative of this game, you do not stop seeing him. I began doing research for this video thinking it would be a fun little exploration of all the small Easter eggs he's appeared in, but the list of sightings kept growing and growing and growing. This guy is everywhere, fucking everywhere. This video is a documentation of my findings, my exploration in trying to find and understand everything there is to find and understand about this monster that is haunting the narrative of Deltarune. I'm not gonna waste any more time. Let's just jump right into it. Also, by the way, just thought you guys should know that I have a GamerSups code now. GamerSups.com/Pastra. You can use the code that you see on screen here to get 10% off any of your purchases on GamerSups. Okay, cool. Let's get to the video. Yeah. Device_friend made his first appearance in Deltarune's second chapter, acting as a mere Easter egg that could be found when doing the route to obtain Spamton's Shadow Crystal. When venturing into the Queen's basement to get your hands on the empty disc item, Friend can be seen watching from the darkness in one of the rooms you must go to before the carousel appears. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but they are there. This small appearance sparked much intrigue in the community at the time for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, the appearance of the character. Friend was a disembodied face, with its most striking features being its eyes, which shared a color palette with Spamton's glasses, implying a deeper connection between him and whoever this Friend character was. This led to a lot of discussion at the time, with the most popular theory being that Friend was the Mike mentioned when exhausting Spamton's dialogue in his shop. As well as this implied connection, Friend was also immediately fascinating for the prefix their sprite file had, which labeled them as a device. The reason this was important was because there is a popular fan theory that the device prefix in the game files refers to some kind of device created by W.D. Gaster for the express purpose of allowing us, the player, to interact with the game. Elements of the game, such as the character creator and save files, for example, are given this same prefix. So between the clear connection to Spamton and this, it was clear to most people that this character or entity or whatever they were was important. This small Easter egg was not the only time the presence of Friend could be observed in Chapter 2 as well. When exploring the Dark World, the colors yellow and pink could be seen in multiple places, further establishing a strange connection between the Dark World and whoever this Friend is. At one point, the player can see neon signs in the background of the Cyber City, displaying those colors and the imagery of cats alongside them. These same bright pink and yellow colors can also be seen in the windows of Cyber City, just far enough out of view that you may not notice them. But once you're looking for them, they are right in your face. This character was everywhere, but we had no way of knowing why, as Deltarune was still very much in its infancy when Chapter 2 was out. Everyone just kind of assumed he either was Spamton or was something relating to Spamton purely because of the shared eye color and Friend's first appearance happening in a route that was directly tied to Spamton. He would not stop appearing after this, though, with his presence continuing to be felt within the game and, more importantly, external media. The first instance of us seeing Friend outside of the game happened when Fangamer launched its first Deltarune Chapter 2 merch, and with it, the Spamton Special Fun Pack. In this funny little paper bag, fans could purchase any number of goofy little trinkets relating to Spamton, with one being of note to this discussion: a Do Not Disturb sign for your door showing Spamton in all his glory, as well as a piercing pair of pink and yellow eyes behind him. This is not too important in the grand scheme of things. It is merch, after all, but I bring attention to it both because it further reinforces the clear connection between both of these characters, as well as acting as a prelude to a major development in this character's relevance: the Spamton Sweepstakes. If you hadn't heard of this, I don't blame you. The Spamton Sweepstakes was a live charity event where donators had the chance to win a whole plethora of Spamton-themed prizes. It was a goofy, fun event with one of my favorite videos on YouTube tied to it for the finale, but on top of that, the community quickly realized that there was an ARG element attached to it. By exploring the Spamton Sweepstakes site, people were able to find teasers for future chapters, Easter eggs alluding to stories that have yet to be explored, and yes, you guessed it, they could encounter Friend. The first and most obvious of these Friend encounters was in the form of the chair page that, when clicked enough, would cause you to be jump scared by Friend's eyes. But this was just the tip of the iceberg. Further exploration of this site eventually led to the discovery of a series of blog posts that were made by Noelle. These blog posts ranged from a couple of things. One discussed her interactions early on with Susie, one talked about her frequent playing of the game Dragon Blazers, and another, very important one, discussed a game she used to play called Cat Petters. This blog goes over her experiences with the game, and it shows us a couple very notable things. Mainly the fact that the game she played had a very similar art style to a real pet raising game called Cats 2, which predominantly featured cats that were made up of a bunch of segmented circles that were all animated separately. This doesn't sound important, but trust me, it is. She tells a story about her time playing the game, about how she would frequently mess with it, and how one day she got an egg for a cat that never hatched. She raised it, took care of it, but nothing ever came of it. It eventually just left. This whole story was strange, but how is it connected to Friend? How is Friend connected to any of this? Well, a deeper dive into Noelle's blog posts eventually leads us to a page where she specifically breaks down how the rarities of the different cats you could catch in the game worked. There was an 80% chance for a normal cat, a 15% chance for a cat with blue aura, a 4% chance for a rock and roll cat, and a super incredibly low chance for an angel cat. Suspiciously, she also mentions the existence of a supposedly rarer cat that only she saw, one that killed her and that she had no recollection of.
What?
That already sets off alarm bells, but what gets weirder is when we look deeper into the Spamton sweepstakes themselves. By doing so, we can find a minigame that parallels this blog post. A minigame that allows us to click on random cats on screen that perfectly match Noelle's description. We can click normal cats, cats with blue aura, rock and roll cats, angel cats. All of it's here. And you know what else is here? Friend. Lingering on this site long enough, clicking on cats eventually results in a friend jump scare that sends you back to the main page. Friend is deeply connected with this cat petters game, and even more so, deeply connected with Noelle. Because truth be told, this is not where the connections between these two characters stop. When we look deeper into Noelle's story, we can see instances and implications of this character everywhere. As I said before, the windows in Cyber City back in Chapter 2 showcase the color of Friend's eyes, but what I didn't mention is that these colored windows specifically appear once you get to the part of the game where Noelle is in your party. As well as that, if you go to this same location during the weird route, the windows become much clearer and easier to see, as if the game now wants you to look at them. And on top of all that, it doesn't stop there, because in the same chapter, once you get Noelle in the party, you will distinctly notice that in the HUD for the party, Noelle is depicted as being a bright yellow color for her sprite. And Susie, Noelle's crush, who she spends the entire game fawning over, Susie's sprite is pink. I know, I already sound crazy, but I can't be the only one who sees this connection, right? Noelle is already so intertwined with this thing. I'm just seeing him everywhere now, and we haven't even gotten to Chapter 3 yet. Speaking of Chapter 3, this chapter, as well as Chapter 4, are where this character's appearances begin to amp up to 11. In Chapter 3 especially, this is where the general player is going to see him, as it has his most in-your-face appearances that aren't tied to Easter eggs or external media. The first and most obvious of these appearances happens at the very beginning of the chapter during Ralsei's monologue. When describing the dark and the creatures that come from it, front and center of the visual aid is Friend given a full body. This design is very interesting. Not only does it clearly convey now that this character is a cat, which further reinforces its connection to the Cat Petters game, but it also shares similarities to the appearance of one of the amalgams seen in Undertale's True Lab. I don't know why this is the case, but it is an interesting detail. Continuing on, there are some small occurrences throughout this chapter which could be unrelated or pure coincidence, but very well could also relate back to Friend once again. During the results screen after completing Tenna's game boards, the text for the results are, you guessed it, pink and yellow. Going into the back of the S rank room and interacting with the vending machine will allow you to purchase an item simply called Smile, with accompanying flavor text that reads, always at your humble service. The game doesn't directly communicate that this is related to Friend, but it honestly has them written all over it, given everything we've observed thus far, so I'm inclined to believe it is. Speaking of that S rank room, Friend's presence in this chapter becomes even more obvious the moment we gain access to this. I made a whole video on this sequence and why it freaks me out so much, which you can watch by clicking the link in the top corner, so I won't get too much into detail on it, but it is a gold mine for Friend sightings, so I'ma really hone in on it here. First,
pursuing your thrill requires clear vision. Smith Optics makes it simple to get premium, outdoor-ready prescription sunglasses without the hassle. Explore more at smithoptics.com.
First things first, to actually access this minigame, the player needs to get their hands on a controller that they do not have. At first, it seems like you're gonna need to go and look for it, but suddenly, there it is, just left there for you right outside the room. Inspecting the item, the flavor text on it tells us that the controller has pink and yellow joysticks. Not even playing the game yet, and friend is making his presence known now. Later on, you're also able to talk to Ram about this whole weird interaction, asking if someone else was in the room with you, to which he just kind of brushes it off, which... The fact that this is brought to our attention at all, and the fact that the controller is so evidently tied to this character, it has some scary implications about friend just lurking in the back room with us. Actually getting into the game itself, this is where I feel most people really started to take note of this character and his sightings within the game. Exploring the different worlds of the original game board, the player can immediately enter these pyramids once they've leveled up enough, which I mentioned in my previous video allows us to see this chapter's secret boss, Eram, lurking in the dark. What I neglected to mention is that Eram is not the only one present here. Entering the same pyramid from a different entrance allows us to encounter Friend itself, who, depending on which way we enter from, will either be present with their smile visible in the dark or their eyes before vanishing. We get to see more of Friend after this in the actual Eram boss fight itself, where the entity spawns in masses as an enemy we can fight, vanishing with the exact same laugh every time we attack them. Both of these appearances, as well as it just appearing in the opening Rousey monologue, were what properly introduced me to this character and sparked this entire deep dive in the first place. At first, I thought this thing was a mere enemy used as an ad for the boss fight and nothing else, only to realize as I dug deeper for my video about Eram that Friend had much, much more going on. Speaking of which, although that is the end of Chapter 3's appearances for Friend, there are a couple of things I've yet to mention about these appearances that really intrigue me. Firstly, that odd controller. When thinking about this controller, one may wonder what it would be in the light world given how important it is. Well, actually going to the light world and exploring Chris and Azriel's bedroom, we get our answer. It's a bootleg controller hooked up directly to Chris's game console. A bootleg controller that Chris used to play Dragon Blazers. The same game series that Noelle talked about playing in her blog posts. The same Dragon Blazers that is evidently mirrored by the secret original game board we play with the odd controller in the Dark World. Don't believe me? Let's quickly take a detour to look at what Gerson says in Chapter 4. In Chapter 4, we clearly learned that Dragon Blazers was based off of Gerson's novel, Lord of the Hammer. And during Gerson's boss fight, he describes what happens in each chapter of that book. These chapters are shown in the original game through the setting we play in. Chapter 2 is called The City of the Shining, which clearly relates to Chapter 2 of Deltarune with Queen, but also is paralleled here by the third game board. Chapter 3 is called The Isle of Northern Light, with it being described how the heroes travel the islands to catch a glimpse of a lost land. Looking at the original game board, this lines up perfectly with the Ice Palace, with there even being a message in it which reads, "Go to the Northern Light." This original game is Dragon Blazers, which is important, both because it explains where the odd controller comes from, but it even further reinforces the connection between Friend and Noelle. Noelle played Dragon Blazers, and when we go to the original board in the Ice Palace, we can gain a party member that is clearly supposed to be Noelle.
True.
So many aspects of Noelle's life have this bizarre connection to Friend, and it doesn't stop there, because once we look at Chapter 4 properly, it gets worse. Chapter 4 is perhaps the most important chapter for Friend appearances, mainly because it feels like the point in the game where a lot of smaller threads begin coming together. We can first see Friend in this chapter when engaging with the secret Mike boss fight, which turns out to merely be a bunch of Pippins in disguise. Throughout this fight and the lead up to it, there is a lot of cat imagery with yellow and pink going alongside it. As well as this, a section of the fight allows you to play the Cat Petters minigame from the Deltarune website, complete with the same Friend Easter egg if you play it for long enough. This adds nothing new to what we already knew before, but it's a fun way for this connection from before to make its way into the actual game so that people can more easily find it. As well as this, even one of the fake mics we fight has a cat design with pink and yellow eyes, which is clearly meant to be a silly nod towards early fan theories that Mike and Friend were one and the same. After this, we start to see some creepier and much more important references to the character throughout this chapter. When venturing into the Chapter 4 Dark World, there are these rooms you can find that are shrouded in such deep darkness that the only way to see is by using the sound waves created by your footsteps. In one of these rooms, completely hidden, we can actually find Friend hiding away from us, only being revealed when the sound waves pass by him. This alone is extremely creepy, but the Easter eggs we find later are even worse. Later on in the chapter, we're able to interact with these NPCs called organics, who take the role of philosophers. They speak about a bunch of random things, but there is one in particular who is incredibly interesting. He's very out of the way, and when you speak to him, you will quickly notice that his dialogue is jumbled up. Deciphering the dialogue will give you the message: lost where the forest would grow. The children followed the pointed tail. The poor children. Now, this message could mean a lot of things, but it, in tandem with a couple of other interesting Easter eggs, seem to connect it to one evil, smiling friend. As well as this bit of dialogue, we can find another Easter egg in the form of a prophecy that discusses the same tale. The prophecy reads, "The tale of hell will take crawl," and shows a peculiar looking tail made of segmented circles, very similar to the ones described in Cat Petters. As well as this, we can find another prophecy that simply reads roots, depicting the visual of a house between two trees. This house could mean a lot of things, but there are two aspects of it that stand out to me and feel relevant to the discussion at hand. Firstly, this house and the way it's set up looks and feels very similar to that of the bunker. One large structure wedged between trees in a spot where the forest would grow. As well as this, it looks strikingly similar to the adoption center from Cats 5, which could very well be intentional, but who knows, maybe it's just confirmation bias speaking. All this to say, though, that these three Easter eggs all feel intrinsically linked to Friend and his involvement in the overarching story of Deltarune. They paint a very grim picture of the goings-on in the world and how Friend could potentially be tied both to the disappearances of multiple children in the light world, but also could be a key player in the prophecy. There is even more that can be found going deeper into this chapter, if you can believe it, and it's all thanks to good old Gerson and his dialogue during his boss fight. During this fight, as we described before, he goes over the different chapters of his book Lord of the Hammer, which we learned was adapted into Dragon Blazers, and adapted from the prophecy. Well, one interesting thing is that Gerson actually briefly talks about Chapter 5 and gives us a very small glimpse into what that chapter will hold. And what is it he says? Chapter 5, the field of pink and gold. The vast garden is charred in an inferno of jealousy. Pink and gold. There it is again, those two colors that have driven me to what feels like complete madness everywhere I look. Pink and yellow. This description alone to me implies we're going to be seeing much more of Friend in Chapter 5, and that coupled with the King Trapped in Asylum prophecy featuring Asgore that can be found, I'm scared about how things are shaping up. One final little tidbit I think is worth mentioning here before we move on is a much more minor detail that could bear some heavy significance. When we go to the end of the chapter where we have our final confrontation with the Roaring Knight and the Titan, there is this scene where Susie is shit-talking the Knight and the Knight begins to laugh. Those who were very astute quickly took note of the fact that this laugh sound effect is the exact same laugh that can be heard from Friend. The exact same one. Whether this bears significance, I don't know. But given everything else we've seen so far, I wouldn't be surprised. And that takes us to the current end of Friend sightings in Deltarune. There may be some I missed or some connections I've yet to draw, but that is all I was able to currently find in my own research and make connections to. That being said, though, we're not done yet. It may seem like we are, but somehow we're not done yet. Let's take a trip 10 years back to a little game called Undertale. This game had very minute details that nobody would have paid attention to, but given the current subject of this video, now mean a lot. First things first, you know how on the Spamton sweepstake there was this odd sprite of Friend that had a magenta eye for seemingly no reason despite the eye normally being a brighter pink? Well, taking a look at Sans during his boss fight reveals something interesting to us. The karma mechanic, that little poison effect that all of his attacks give you, the coloration of those attacks is magenta when shown on your yellow health bar. The same magenta we see with Friend's eyes down to the fucking hex code. And that's
Damn.
not all. His yellow eye, same color as the yellow used for sparing enemies, for the save points, for your health. And it continues to get worse, dear viewer, because there is an elephant in the room I've yet to even mention. In the ruins of Undertale, having been present since the first demo, is a frogget. A simple, unsuspecting frogget. Talking to this frogget, he will allow you to change the color of your spare button from its usual yellow to pink. The exact same pink as Friend's eyes are normally. Same hex code and everything. This can't be a coincidence, right? But then what does it even mean if it isn't? Why would a frogget in the ruins changing the color of our spare color in fucking Undertale be relevant to the existence of some demonic cat creature in a game Toby Fox released 10 years later? I don't understand. I swear this character is everywhere I look. I go to watch a fun cartoon, there he fucking is. I go to look at pictures of cute little cats, there he is. I want to buy some Joy-Cons for the Switch. Nope. No, you don't, because there he is, hiding in plain sight. No matter where I go, he's there. It's like I unlocked some kind of eldritch knowledge I wasn't supposed to have. Okay, Pastor, calm down. Calm down, it's just a coincidence. You just need to detox. Just go play some Fortnite or something. That always cheers you up. Oh, yeah, let's go. This is exactly what I needed. Nothing beats good old Fortnite. Oh, my buddy's emoting. Let me just join in. Wait a minute. No, it can't be. No, anywhere but Fortnite. No, not that cat. Anyone but that cat. I'll never be free.
Watch baseball all season long. Catch the action live.
I'm gonna sub to this guy.
Like
I'm giving him a
Stats
sub. Oh, there's still a lot of video left, man. Damn.
What does it all mean? Surely Toby wouldn't infect his fans with the feline equivalent of the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon for shits and giggles. Right? Surely. There's an explanation here. A missing puzzle piece. Something that will tell us what Friend's purpose in Deltarune's narrative is, or will ultimately be. Are they Gaster's evil lackey, doing his bidding in order to move the plot of Deltarune forward? Are they a demon, born from the darkest depths from which the fountains are released? Are they going to be the final boss of the game? Maybe they're secretly pulling all the strings behind the scenes, secretly controlling the knight's actions. Could they be controlling Carol? Could they be the ones truly controlling Chris? Could they be controlling you? Could they control me? Could they even... Anyways, obviously we are working to solve an incomplete puzzle over here. And as of the release of this video at least, only 4 of the 7 chapters that compose Deltarune have been released. But as a certified Deltarune gamer with an incredibly high IQ who's never been wrong about any of my Deltarune theories ever, I feel particularly equipped to solve this heterochromic mystery. So let me just take a stab at the dark here and come up with my own theory for what Friend's all about. And then you guys can tell me what you think about it in the comments. So I think I have about, I think I got about 8 minutes before they're done with that, so just hear me out here. As Zach previously mentioned, everywhere Noelle Holiday goes, Friend is sure to follow. They are in Dragon Blazers. They are in the Chapter 4 Cat Petters inspired minigames. Always hidden, just out of sight. Always smiling, watching. And if you really think about it, if we just ignore the rest of Deltarune's plot and focus purely on Noelle, she's sort of a protagonist of a creepypasta story, isn't she? Like, she's almost the archetypical creepypasta/unfiction horror story protagonist. She has a blog dedicated to secrets, glitches, and Easter eggs in her favorite games, a sister who disappeared under mysterious circumstances, very frequently shows gaps in her memory caused by traumatic events, and yet, she has an unwavering determination to face the unknown. Maybe out of curiosity, maybe out of some masochistic adrenaline-fueled thrill, or maybe, just maybe, as an unconscious drive to find something, anything, that could tell her where Des might have gone to. And if Noelle's the protagonist of this creepypasta story, well then, buddy, who better to serve the role of the mysterious antagonistic anomaly/cryptid than our buddy Friend over here? Every time Noelle digs deeper than she's supposed to, Friend is there to greet her. Noelle tries to document every single cat type in Cat Petters. Bam! Friend jump scare. Noelle tries to mod her game to get the ultimate secret cat. Bam! Special egg friend thing. Noelle plays Dragon Blazers and accidentally performs the evil weird route in her game. Bam! There they are throughout the sword routes. Noelle has a habit of reading her blog spam mail, forming a small connection with her spam bot, to the point that he gifted her a little peepees? Well, guess what entity might have then contacted that little mailman in the dark world, and had such a profound impact on him that he still wears that entity's colors on his glasses? So, with that all in mind, I ask you, what if the dark worlds of Deltarune have the power to give life not only to objects, but a Lightner's own imagination itself? A vision of something that only existed within your own mind. Something you maybe secretly wished existed. Something you looked for. A being brought into existence through the power of darkness mixed in with belief. A stray childhood thought. A creepy monster you swear you saw lurking in the shadows of your bedroom. Maybe a dark secret you were hoping to uncover, hidden inside your favorite video game. Friend is Noelle's Mew behind the truck. Friend is Noelle's operator, her Ben who drowned, her Sonic of the .exe variety. And well, yes, Friend is a little scary creature, sure. It's not like Noelle's adverse to scary things, right? In fact, as she herself says in Chapter 2's Carousel Ride, she finds such things comforting. And that's what I believe Friend really is. A sort of imaginary friend. The reward for looking deeper than anyone else would. A creature born from darkness, conjured from the mind of a sheltered little kid, seeking some thrills to spice up their boring hometown life. And yet, there's, something missing, isn't there? There's something missing in this theory. An unexplained emptiness. A missing puzzle piece. The thing that makes Friend so much more special than other Darkners. Because unlike any other Darkner, any other character, Friend's presence haunts the very roots of the narrative itself. And so, while our missing puzzle piece still isn't here for us to find, its presence, or rather, its absence, can still be felt. In the middle of Chapter 2, Chris and Noelle start to reconnect. Noelle then reminisces about their shared past. She talks about a shining city of lights, a place very similar to the very cyber city they're walking through. One that Noelle's sister December once said that she would take her to. A place they promised each other they'd one day go out to and explore together. But before that promise could be fulfilled, December went missing. It happened during the night, years before our own story began, back when all four of them were still kids. Chris, Noelle, Astriel, and December, two pairs of siblings, two families once inseparable, an adventuring party, maybe as a dare, maybe to prove a school rumor wrong, maybe as a test of courage spurred on by the older siblings, or to just simply go on an adventure together and have some fun outside. Regardless of the reason, they all set out to explore the edges of hometown, beyond that graveyard, in the middle of the night, surrounded by darkness. And of course, as a group of rebels would, without adult supervision. And so they would all quickly find themselves lost where the forest would grow.
Watch hit movies and TV shows on YouTube. Stream House of the Dragon now.
You now have the power no man has ever wielded. And our children will rule it forever and a day.
There will be no doubt who the gods have chosen to rule.
Get HBO Max and more streaming channels to watch your favorites on YouTube.
Until they all spotted something. A rustle in the trees, a figure moving amongst the leaves, a black tail, just out of sight, or rather, spots? Circles? An organized formation, a group of shadows trailing one after the other, snaking back and forth, a hypnotizing performance. A terrified Noelle cries out, frozen in fear, unable to move, until comforted by her sister, who wipes her tears away with Assie's jacket. Who knows what December felt in that moment? Was she confident she could get everyone back home? Did she feel excitement at the opportunity to be the hero her sister and friends needed at that moment? Did she feel the responsibility weigh heavy on her shoulders of getting everyone back to safety? Or was she also scared of the things that went bump in the night, yet still chose to put up a brave face for everyone else? We don't know. And we don't know what happened after that moment either. Not yet anyway. And maybe we won't get to know. Even once the story is over. The only thing we know right now is that without any other option, without anywhere else left to go, without any other thing to guide them back home, the children followed the pointed tail. And then the poor children never saw their big sister again.
Apologies, friends, for that outburst from before. I have recovered now and feel wonderful. This was such a fun video to make. I hope you liked it. I know I did. If you want to come back, that would be cool. I will see you in next video. Subscribe, please. That would be nice.
Damn. Oh yeah, let's listen to this.
Warning! The following video has spoilers for all of Deltarune as of July
always gotta
2026. You have been warned.
Alright, with Deltarune Chapter 5 having finally released, it put to bed a lot of debates and predictions. Well, except for Neo Woody Theory. I know Yellow wasn't literally a manifestation of the Cowboy Show, but Flowery references it when Yellow first shows up, and there are multiple Toy Story references, and I literally said the Cowboy would be an ally and the chapter would be nostalgia-based, and... Anyway, we now have only 2 chapters left to go before Deltarune is over, meaning that, as far as I'm concerned anyway, we know more about the game than we don't. And the rest of the community seems to agree with this sentiment, because among all the speculation and debates about Gaster and the shelter and how the weird route will go into Chapter 7, there seems to be one thing that the fanbase is rather unanimous on, that Chapter 6 will be taking place in the Holiday Manor. See, Chapter 5 ended off pretty clearly telling us that Noelle will be joining us for Chapter 6, in the Dark World. Susie tells Chris that it's time for these adventures to stop being between the two of them, and that they need help. That Noelle specifically needs to be in on this with them. And can I just say, this really is Susie's love showing, because why the fuck aren't you getting Bertley to help? Like, he's strong, man! But anywho, we get a whole montage right at the end of Chapter 5 of Susie preparing Castletown for Noelle's arrival. Pair this up with the fandom collectively agreeing that the idea of a Holiday Manor Dark World would be really cool, especially with December's room being in there, and that's how we get to the current common census. But that's not all either. There's a lot of people that feel like Des has not been set up well enough, since Asgore does not explicitly name her and go all in depth about December specifically at the end of Chapter 5, which honestly, I don't see why he would in the context of the story. Chris knows who December is, and it's not like Asgore knows we're possessing them, but that's besides the point. There's some interesting dialogue in Chapter 2 with Noelle and Rudy in the hospital. They're playing Dragon Blazers together, which we now know is based on Lord of the Hammer, which was based on the prophecy. Rudy questions why Noelle would use an ice spell instead of Fire Shock on the ice boss, to which Noelle replies she would love to use Fire Shock, but the mage left the party. And wouldn't you know it, in Chapter 5, Ralsei does indeed show off that he can use fire magic. So I'd say this is pretty clear foreshadowing that we're going to an ice-themed Dark World. However, Holiday Manor is not the only icy location in Hometown. And by the end of this video, I think I'll have you convinced that Holiday Manor is just a bit too easy of an option. This, my friends, is Icy, the Cryptid's Palace.
Oh, you know what? That makes sense.
Before we begin, yes, other people have made videos about Icy and Deltarune before, and I'll link a few of the most notable ones in the description. David Amiago and Raginade both made Icy videos pre-Chapter 5 that are both pretty good. And funnily enough, even though this was a Chapter 2 era video, Cammy Boy G did actually predict that Chapter 6 would take place in Icy's. But why, right? What's the significance of this damn thing? Well, like with a lot of things, we start with Undertale. And you want to know the really funny thing about Icy in Undertale? He appears in one place and one place only, and it's Sans' word jumble. Yeah, Icy isn't a food mascot or anything else in Undertale, unless you count the 10th anniversary stream, in which he's the school mascot. But come on, Toby Fox wasn't thinking about that in 2015. And the strangest thing about this word jumble is that it's got a really weird fun value event. I don't think I need to explain what a fun value event is to you, but just know, it's not some silly shit. There's a whole nother snowman that shows up on the paper here with a text that just says Nightmare. But don't tell the Jevil fans I said that, because they might think he'll be relevant next chapter. Funnily enough, this was actually one of the very few fun value events that were bugs that you could not access without editing your save file when Undertale first came out. The only other events that were like this were the Gaster related ones, which is crazy to me. And not because I think Icy is Gaster, despite me referencing the video that's titled that, but because I think it proves that Icy will be relevant to Deltarune. Hindsight is 2020, and I think it's pretty fair to say that Gaster was always intended to be the Deltarune guy from the very beginning. As far back as like 2016, you could go to Deltarune.com and read the prophecy in Wingdings. So is it really a coincidence that the only place we see Icy in Undertale at all is on an item handed to us by Sans, who is very clearly from Deltarune, to the point that now we literally have undeniable proof of where the punch card comes from in his laboratory? And that same item in Undertale has a weird fun value event saying Nightmare and is oddly tied to the Gaster fun value events? But I hear you. There's gotta be some more concrete stuff in Deltarune itself for this to be believable at all. But just put a pin in the Sans idea for now, because I am gonna bring up Sans again later. Look, I'm going to gloss over the fact that Sans' word jumble is directly referenced in Chapter 2, and upon solving it, a green Icy shows up that then shatters into a million pieces and disappears. Okay, I'm not gonna feed all my green Gaster lovers today. You know why? Icy is inexplicably tied to the greater conspiracy of Deltarune, from Noelle to December to Eram, and I'm not kidding. In Chapter 3, we first meet Eram on the sword route. In the secret game that Ram lets us play, we enter the shelter and encounter Eram, who tells us that they can see in in the dark before we go and duke it out and it starts summoning friends and shit. Everybody knows how big of a deal this is. The song that plays during this boss is titled Burning Eyes. And this title was actually foreshadowed in Chapter 2 by, you guessed it, Spamton. Upon seeing the soul for the first time, he said he's never seen a heart-shaped object like that before, and that his eyes are burning like, quote, DVDs of any movie at half price. Like, haha, Spamton, spam email, and, illegal movie pirating, whatever. But there was one other place this was foreshadowed too, and it was during the Spamton sweepstakes. We got access to a page called deltarune.com/icy, and it's all about the recent sightings of Icy, as if he's some kind of cryptid, which I'm also going to come back to, so please put a pin in that as well. Anyways, there are 2 sightings that were submitted by Noelle. In the first one, she claims that she went down to the kitchen to eat leftover pizza, and in the dark, Icy on the box of the pizza winked at her. Now, with most stories, you'd say that this is just a kid seeing things in the dark, but it's Deltarune. It's about dark worlds. I feel like this is something to keep note of. But the second sighting is far more interesting. And it's because Noelle says that December Holiday burned out the eyes of the Icy pizza box. Huh, burned out the eyes, huh? Oh yeah, I almost forgot. You want to know another place Icy's mentioned in Chapter 2? Right before Chris opens the Dark Fountain, when them and Susie are watching TV, Susie makes the comment that maybe Icy the movie is more their speed. Icy the movie. Icy's burned out eyes. My eyes are burning like DVDs of any movie at half price. Yeah, like I'm sure Icy the movie is more Chris's speed. Chris has been in that damn shelter before, and they went in there again to go see Eram, whose eyes are burned out, just like Icy's. But even removed from Eram, the Icy stuff gets weird in Chapter 3. During the Doom board with Tenna, there's this really scary, unskippable moment where Tenna's like, they're coming out of the pipes, they're crawling out of the pipes. And these little blobs start shuffling across the screen. In this moment that's got just scary ambience, and Tenna's tweaking the fuck out afterwards. And this isn't even like an optional thing. Again, this is mandatory. You have to see this. Those blobs are Icies. Fully animated Icies. Dark World Icies. Ask yourself, what would be the point of doing this? To fuck with us? This isn't Scott Cawthon we're talking about. I'm getting ahead of myself. I gotta dial it back for a second.
This is a good video, yo.
If we were to go to Icy's in Chapter 6, what would it be about and why? What would make that a more appropriate Dark World than the Holiday Manor, for example? And listen, you're gonna have to walk with me for a second, because the answer is Five Nights at Freddy's. When Chapter 5 released, Toby Fox gave us this message. In Chapter 4, we saw dark clouds on the horizon. That's why, let's not look there for now. Let's turn around and watch the sun before it goes down completely. Let's smile again. Let's have one more fun adventure, okay? Because truly, no matter how you slice it, we're definitely going to the shelter in Chapter 7. Especially if you believe the whole double doors thing, which was only subverted by Chapter 3. And yes, I know that Asgore's Flower King shop had one door, but the inside has a set of double doors, and we came out of those in Chapter 5. And once you know it, Icy's has a set of double doors too, and Holiday Manor does not. But that's besides the point. No matter what you think is truly going to be in the shelter, it is absolutely not going to be sunshine and rainbows. Gaster has always been associated with 666. And the depths? Well, they've been associated with hell since Chapter 1, when Jevil told us that hell's roar bubbles from the depths. Now, speaking of Chapter 1, there's an interesting line of dialogue in Hometown after the fact. Would you like to know what Pizza Pants says about Icy's the second you ask him about it? Make no mistake, little buddy. Icy's pizza is hell. Chapter 6 needs to bridge the gap tonally between Chapters 5 and 7. And what better way to do it than with this character, than with this location? Not to mention the fact that there is literally an employee here named Purple Guy who wears a mascot costume of Icy. And on the festival day, wouldn't you know it, we submerge him in water. You wanna know a crazy fun fact that I've seen literally nobody mention before? In the Weird Route, Purple Guy gets completely dissolved in the water that he gets dunked into at the festival. And considering that we skip literally all of Chapter 6 in the Weird Route, I'm honestly not surprised, because we probably would have encountered him. Because if there's anybody that knows the FNAF lore like the back of her hand, it's absolutely Noelle. I mean, hell, in Chapter 2, there is an Icy statue in the room that Queen makes for her, all because Noelle looked up, is Icy real cryptid? Could you imagine if the mascot costumes became Darkners while someone was wearing them? Let's look at Deltarune.com/Icy again. After Noel says that December burned out Icy's eyes and he looked evil, Azriel says that they should bury the box, and Chris dug a hole in the ground in the graveyard, and Noel was so scared a zombie would come up. All these facts about Icy's pizza combined makes it seem like a really thinly veiled FNAF parody to me. I will literally eat my shorts if this happens and Noel does not reference Five Nights at Freddy's at least one time. She references Among Us in Chapter 4. It is insane how—
I wonder if this has to do with anything with the that soap that smells like pizza. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, that's what just popped up in my mind. This is a really good video. I kind of want to listen to it all over again. Cause I didn't know Noel. This is just all craziness to me, yo. And it's just craziness to me.
how many appearances Icy has, and how infatuated Toby seems to be with him. Like, what's with the box over the head? But even within just the games, I mean, he shows up in the light world, in the dark world, and in Undertale itself, completely unchanged. There's only one other entity in all of Toby Fox's creations who has this in common with Icy, and it's Everyman, who we first meet in the True Lab in Undertale. But speaking of the True Lab, I want you to think about reverse Undertale theory for a moment. If you don't know what that is, now's your chance to look it up in full, but it was absolutely not subverted in Chapter 5. The moment we got in there, we got a reference to the conveniently shaped bushes. There's even callbacks to the ruins in Chapter 5, with some of its architecture. But then, that leaves one location left, and yeah, it is the True Lab. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Chapter 6 needs to bridge the gap between chapters 5 and 7. I believe it is incredibly thematically appropriate for it to take a more horror-esque turn. And especially because Toby's told us that this chapter is easier to make than the others, which I assume includes chapter 7 as well, I think we should lower our expectations for what the overworld will look like. If we were going to say the Holiday Manor, I'd imagine that the overworld would be quite complex. But compare that to the interior of Icy's that we see in chapter 2, and you don't have much to work with. And if we're to expect a True Lab callback at some point, which I think we should definitely expect something like that, the new dialogue about Friend from Mew Mew all but confirms that Friend is an important character, and wouldn't you know it, they look just like Endogeny, who we also meet in the True Lab. I can't imagine that it'll be too complicated. But let's say you're sold on Chapter 6 having some callbacks to the True Lab. I can hear some of you screaming already, isn't this evidence for a hospital Dark World? What's tying Icy to the amalgamates in the True Lab at all? Well, my friends, do you remember the alleyway in which Alphys is leaving out milk for a cat that doesn't exist? Take a wild guess what two things are graffiti tagged on the wall in that alleyway. Everyman from the True Lab and Icy. Although, I'm seeing one problem right now. And it's a problem that a lot of Deltarune theories have. How would this work thematically? How does it tie into the actual story, beyond just the evidence within the world? So many Deltarune theories miss this crucial piece, and it's why so many of them end up not aging well. I tried to apply this logic with Neo Woody theory, and wouldn't you know, it's why I got so many things about Chapter 5 right in that video, even if it wasn't everything. Ironically enough, the things that were most correct about Chapter 5 in that video were the things that didn't really have much to do with the cowboy show itself. So let's try to tie it into the story. But before we get into that, please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video, and if you want to support me and the people behind this channel, consider checking out the Patreon. It is the best way to support this channel, and we've got some really cool rewards that I think you guys would like, such as a community Discord, shoutouts, and a fully illustrated portrait of your Sonar or favorite character at the end of every video. But enough of the plugs. Comparing the Icy Dark World idea to the other two big candidates I see most of the time, I believe the Hospital Dark World lacks the ice motif that is needed for Chapter 6. Remember what I said at the start of the video. It is very like likely that this is the chapter where the mage leaves the party in favor of Noelle, who we know will be joining us in Chapter 6. Holiday Manor has that going for it, the ice motif. However, I don't see how that will allow us to tonally escalate into the shelter. We've explored the holiday house already. The closest thing we have there is December's room, and as much as I hate to say it, I don't think it's very likely. The whole house is Christmas themed, and less importantly anyway, the lack of double doors at the Holiday Manor also dissuade me from this idea. But then what about Icy? What would the theme of an Icy chapter be? As I predicted, the form of escapism that we witnessed in Chapter 5 was in fact nostalgia. So what will it be in Chapter 6? Well, I think the word was literally handed to us on a silver platter in Chapter 5. It's high time we talk about conspiracy theories. Icy is synonymous with conspiracy theories and cryptid culture. Icy is constantly referred to as a cryptid. There's constant weird, creepy imagery with him, and most importantly, Noelle is scared of him. And if Chapter 6 is going to focus a lot on Noelle, as I believe it will, is that not perfect? During his monologue in Chapter 5, Asgore tells us that all of Hometown collectively agreed he was some kind of crazy conspiracy theorist the second he discovered Dark Worlds. What happens when Noelle goes down the same pipeline? She will be considered a conspiracy theorist too. The difference is, she actually is one. Not to mention the massive elephant in the room here, that all of Hometown seems to be wrapped up in one big, massive conspiracy, with the Knight and Chris and December and Friend and Warrendale Gaster all at the head of it. What better way to bring that to its rousing conclusion before the final chapter of the game than the character who is synonymous with all of these ideas? But I think we can take this a step further. Let's talk about our three main candidates for who will be opening the Dark Fountain. First and foremost, let's talk about Chris Dreamer.
With YouTube Music Premium, listen to your favorite songs ad-free. Download music and podcasts to listen offline or on the go. Enjoy thousands of customized playlists and radio stations. And jam to music when your screen is off or while using other apps. There's more to discover with YouTube Music Premium. Try 1 month free.
My bad for the ad.
It has been repeatedly established to us that Chris used to get their jollies out of scaring Noelle. They used to pretend to be the human under the bed, knowing full well Noelle would be scared of that. They also used to tell Noelle that Icy eats kids. So if Chris is the one making this dark fountain that Noelle is entering with them into, it feels incredibly appropriate for it to be this manifestation of all those memories of theirs. The scary ones. Noelle talks a lot about how thrill and fear bring comfort to her. It's the whole reason why she's so infatuated with Susie. And if you're reading between the lines, Susie and Chris and Noelle's relationship is going to go through the ringer very soon. And Icy Dark World would bring all those memories about how Chris also made her feel that way back into the limelight in a way that could prove to be very, very interesting, especially if Chris is the one making the Dark World. The next candidate is the Roaring Knight. And truth be told, I think it would be most interesting if the Knight makes this Dark World, specifically if the Knight is December Holiday. We know that the Knight created the Chapter 2 Dark World, Cyber City. And in that chapter, Noelle says that December always used to promise to take her to a place like this. A big city with flashing lights. Now imagine if the Roaring Knight also creates the Chapter 6 Dark World. Whether Dessa's mind is actually still in there or not, could you imagine if the next Dark World that Noelle enters, created by her own sister, is the exact opposite of the first one she entered? Whereas Cyber City is everything December promised to her, that everything Noelle wants. And Icy Dark World will be everything that makes Noelle scared. And this time she knows it's all real. Look at how jumpy Noelle was just from Alphys jump scaring her in Chapter 5 in the church. I mean, she's shaking after the fact. An Icy Dark World would crank that up to 1,000 and could make for some really interesting stuff. And last but not least, we have Noelle herself. We've seen Chris make a dark fountain, we've seen Susie make a dark fountain. I don't think it's out of the question for Noelle to create a dark fountain too. In Chapter 2, Queen shows all three of their portraits as examples of Lightners who could create a dark fountain. Noelle's the last one who hasn't done it yet. And considering how Noelle grew up scared of Icy and likely still is, and considering the fact that I'm speculating that Chapter 6's form of escapism will be conspiracy theories, to escape from reality in the form of just outright delusion, Noelle would be straight up manifesting all of her worst nightmares into reality. Her worst nightmares. Wow. Oh yeah, I mentioned how I wanted to bring up Sans again, right? Well, now's the time. Chapter 5 gave us the moment of finally finding out where the Don't Forget card comes from. I mentioned that earlier, but so far, Sans doesn't seem to give much of a shit about ICs. And all of us have been wondering when he's going to become relevant to Deltarune, because at some point he's going to have to travel to Undertale in some kind of machine. Well, why couldn't this coincide with Sans getting his hands on the word jumble? It's a very small tidbit, but for all the Sans loyalists who believe he will enter the Dark World at some point on screen, I think ICs would give a far better opportunity for that than literally any other option we have right now. I highly doubt he's going to suddenly become super relevant to the Dark World in Chapter 7. Do I think he'll be a boss? Probably not. Asgore wasn't, Toriel wasn't, but he will definitely show up. Otherwise, I don't know how the hell Toby's gonna pull this one off. Now we've talked about Friend and Eram and Sans and how they all connect to IC. But there's just one more plot thread that everybody's waiting for. One more event in the story that, unsurprisingly, I can connect to IC too. And it's Chris losing their hand. There are several moments throughout the game that hint towards the idea that at some point, Chris is going to lose their hand. But I think we got the most blatant piece of foreshadowing as to when and where that's going to happen as far back as Chapter 1. This is the Warrior. You might have seen him around hometown before. He resembles Icy so much it almost doesn't look like he's wearing a costume. But in Chapter 1, you don't find him at Icy's. And when you ask Pizza Pants about it, he tells you that he was hospitalized for pizza-related injuries.
That don't make no sense.
Upon entering the hospital and walking into the room where the Warrior's hospital bed lies, you will find him with casts over both hands. This might sound crazy what I'm about to say, but I think Chris is going to lose their hand in a pizza-related injury, too, involving the very cryptid they used to torture their childhood best friend with, Icy, in his ice palace. In summary, I believe the Chapter 6 Dark World will take place inside Icy's Pizza, and that the theme of escapism in this chapter will be conspiracy and delusion. I believe Asgore sets this up perfectly in Chapter 5, and that it fits perfectly with Noelle's character, too. And it'd provide Toby with a unique opportunity to criticize our conspiracies and our theories in a more direct way than he has with Bat-Tat. Furthermore, I see a very, very strong opportunity for Sans to finally be important in the Dark World in this chapter, especially with his word jumble being referenced in Deltarune, and of course said word jumble being the only presence of Icy's in Undertale. I'd even go as far as to say that we might see Sans acquire the word jumble in this chapter. Ralsei will likely temporarily leave our party in favor of Noelle, who will most certainly be making a FNAF reference at some point. As a little curveball, I'd like to say we'll encounter Friend at some point in this chapter. But lastly, and most importantly, Chris in this chapter is going to lose their hand. Whew, that's a lot. It's just a shame I couldn't predict any of the bosses in this chapter. David Amiago has gone on a lot about Omega Icy, but after Chapter 5, I can't see us getting another direct callback to Omega Flowey. Although there's something to be said about the fact that the Photoshop element is completely absent. I mean, looking at Reverse Undertale again, Photoshop or Omega Flowey has Toby's head inside the TV, with the rest of the body being this Photoshopped abomination. How crazy would it be if we had some kind of Photoshop Icy and the body belonged to Toby and the head was... Wait. My sister burned the box in the grass to kill it, and it smelled like charcoal pizza. She burned out Icy eyes, and he looked evil, and as he said, took it and said we should bury the box, and Chris dug a hole in the ground in the graveyard, and I was so scared a zombie would come up, and I tried to say, Chris, I'm scared, and they turned around with the box over their face. They turned around with the box over their face! Oh my god! That's all for today. Thanks for sticking around till the end. Before we send off though,
that was a good video. YouTube knows best.
Susie. Ralsei.
I'm not gonna lie, like, it just seems to me that I honestly didn't know that Chris, like, what his personality was. And now I know his personality, right? And I'm thinking that the weird route is actually the real game. That's what it seems like to me. Just like in chapter 3, to play like the real game, to fight ERAM, that's the real game that, you know, Tenna made like a game based off of that and hid that game from us. And that, you know, when I was playing it, that NPC behind the counter did seem important. I just couldn't, I didn't use a guide. I played it blind. I think I'm gonna try to just play, I'm gonna just play 3 over again, definitely. And I don't think you can play 2. You can't do the route in 2 again or something, because I'd love to do I'd like to fight Spamton and get the crystal in 2.
The 3 heroes in
I didn't use a guide.
Deltarune, following the prophecy of Deltarune, will meet their tragic end. But what is their end? Where will we go from where we left off? This video features spoilers for chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8. So get ready.
Cooking with Chris. Oh, hi! I didn't even see that, gamers. I'm just cooking up my favorite recipe, Deltarune Chapter 6. I know, it's not looking so mighty right now, but I'm sure with your help, we can turn this meal into something tasty. You see, ever since the amazing release of Chapter 5, us Toby Fox fans have been avidly waiting for the next edition in the journey of Chris, Ralsei, and Susie. Hello, Noel! And when wait comes, theories follow. So join me, viewers, as we bake up a tasty pot of Deltarune Chapter 6 and 7. How goes it, How goes it, gamers? You're watching Captain Brainstorm. I'm your host, Chris, a popular chef and a master of theories. And today, we'll be putting our noggins together to craft the perfect Deltarune Chapter 6. Get your corn all popped up, because we're gonna give it our all to show you what Chapter 6 could look like. Let's brainstorm! Alright, let's get the Susie Zilla in the room addressed first. Where in the gasser does the next Dark World take place? Well, viewers, during our extensive research, we believe that we have found the answer to this. Let's start from the beginning. Chris wakes up from Chris' den, walks out of their room and eats a honey bagel offered by Toriel. Viewers, don't forget about that honey bagel, it'll be integral later. Chris walks out of the house to see the night made the Dark World of the entire town? Gah! That goddamn...
Nah, bro. I can't listen to it. It sounded like you just making up some shit.
World, Castletown's Grand Fountain is
which
one
we
of
all
Deltarune's
doing,
greatest mysteries.
but you can't sound that
fountain
way.
after fountain, causing them to disappear, this geyser of pure darkness remains and evolves with us, transforming with every new recruit. But why? This kingdom can be a vibrant environment filled with life and NPCs, or an almost empty place with only the most essential darkners inhabiting its darkness. And we can't forget the peculiar Ruden, who calls Castle Count by the player's name, a name no one else ever uses, known only by the entity that welcomes the player. Furthermore, the area known as Unknown is riddled with holes oozing a dark substance very similar to that of the Titans, featuring a puzzle dedicated to the characteristic eyes that appear on the Titans' bodies. What if the answer is that Castletown's fountain isn't the beginning of our adventure, but the result of a previous cycle? What if this kingdom wasn't created by us, but inherited? The truth is, many clues suggest this fountain fountain hides the scars of a prophecy already fulfilled, a roaring that has already devastated the world, and the sacrifice that was made to stop it. Castletown is more like a monument, the key to understanding a sacrifice that has already happened, and that, thanks to the Roaring Night, is about to happen again. So to unravel this mystery, we first need to understand the rules that govern it, and those rules are given to us by the Prince of Darkness himself. Chapter 1, The Dark World's Rules. To begin to understand the anomaly of the Grand Fountain, we must first break down the rules that govern these worlds. Our main source of information is Ralsei, the supposed Prince of Darkness. He is our guide, our informant, and almost everything we know about the prophecy, we know from him. From Ralsei, we learn the foundational legend. For millennia, light and darkness have lived in perfect balance, bringing peace to the world. It is a delicate equilibrium that, according to him, is now threatened by the appearance of a new fountain, shattering the harmony and giving rise to a terrible calamity. He then details the Fountain of Darkness, a geyser that gives his kingdom its form. Here, Ralsei's narrative clashes head-on with reality. A balance of millennia, maintained by a simple supply closet in a school that is barely a few decades old. Something doesn't add up. The school doesn't seem to be thousands of years old, and Ralsei's own kingdom is suspiciously empty. Although it's the first place we meet Lancer, only Ralsei inhabits it. Where are the subjects of this ancient kingdom? Or is it that Ralsei's legend isn't a history lesson, but a convenient narrative? Just before we leave, Ralsei gives Chris a crucial clue, one that defines our relationship with this world. They tell Chris that they believe their choices are important and suggest they avoid fighting. This is a flagrant contradiction to the philosophy the game itself imposes on us.
Bro.
Your choices don't matter. Ralsei's warning seems to go beyond simple friendly advice. It's the first sign that he knows something else is guiding Chris.
Oh, we gotta get the fuck out of here.
The importance of this choice materializes in Chapter 2. If we follow the pacifist path and recruit Darkners instead of fighting them, Castletown transforms. Ralsei's warning wasn't just moral, it was functional. In his own words, Ralsei's kingdom isn't a static place, it's a work in progress. It's a refuge that fundamentally depends on the recruits we bring from other worlds. The need for this refuge becomes painfully clear when a deadly rule is revealed. With the exception of Ralsei, Darkners from other dark worlds grow weak and eventually turn to stone. It's a death sentence, with one very convenient exception. Ralsei holds the ace up his sleeve that makes his whole plan work.
I forgot that she was in levels. I changed her.
It's the only arc that can save them. However, in Chapter 3, Ralsei adds another layer of complexity. He defines Dark Worlds not as another plane, but as an illusion.
Oh, hell yeah. That's why I need that girl. She's like...
It's a place where fantasies can be lived out, but in the end, he insists, it's not real. This is the truth Susie flatly rejects. To her, her friends are real, her experiences are real, and that's the only truth that matters. This tension between Ralsei's fantasy and Susie's felt reality is the key to everything. However, the most important rule, the one that defines the true nature of creation, is revealed later, almost by accident. After Susie's failed attempt to create a fountain to revive Gerson, Ralsei reveals a fundamental truth. This is the missing piece, specific darknesses. It confirms that a Lightner's determination isn't generic, it's a unique frequency, a psychic fingerprint that resonates with objects differently, bringing them to life based on the memories of whoever opened the fountain. Susie's fountain didn't have the right frequency for Gerson, but the one in the church somehow did. These rules are the key, and they prove that the worlds we've sealed are not the only ones that have ever existed. In fact, the evidence of a lost dark world, a ghost fountain, has been right in front of us the whole time. Chapter 2, Other Fountains. The rules Rousey reveals are the key. If darkners are memory patterns tied to specific darknesses, then any darkner who doesn't belong to a fountain's frequency is doomed to turn to stone. This deadly rule, ironically, gives us irrefutable proof that the worlds we have sealed are not the first. Proof that other fountains have existed. The main evidence is one of Chapter 3's most intriguing characters, Ram. At first glance, they look like a simple plug boy, but something is different. They have an explosive personality, unique expressions, and most importantly, they have memories. Ram perfectly remembers their life in the light world. They were a power strip that Chris and Azrael borrowed from the library. They remember Chris playing with them like a toy, an act that gave them their air of greatness. They claim to know Chris well, to know the games they enjoy, and they are the one who grants access to the sword route, but their memories don't end there. Interestingly, Ram remembers Chris and Noelle playing house with the objects that would later become King, Queen, and Tenna. Even more revealing, Ram knows the Darkners from the cyber world. They ask Chris directly about Queen, Swatch, and even Spamton. Ram is a temporal anomaly, a refugee from another world, and their fate seals the theory. Regardless of whether we complete the sword route or not, in the end, Ram turns to stone. This is the smoking gun. Rem was not created in the TV world. Like the other Plug Boys, their origin is in the cyber world, but not the one we visited. Rem was born from a previous dark fountain created in the library. Their petrification is the tragic consequence of a darkner existing in a frequency that is not their own.
That's
and
crazy.
Here, the implications
I gotta
become
play that.
massive. Remember Noelle's
I gotta play that joint
nostalgia?
again,
She claims
man.
Des had promised to take her to a place exactly like the cyber world. The connection is chilling. Des, Azrael, and Chris had already entered a dark world created in the library. That's where they met Rem. Chris didn't take the power strip home because they needed it. They took it because they had befriended Rem in the dark world. Rem is the survivor of a lost adventure, a ghost fountain that was sealed long ago. Rem is the strongest proof, but not the only one. Think about the Pippins. These dice-based darkners appear briefly in the first 2 chapters and fully inhabit the TV world. However, unlike Rem, none of them turn to stone when traveling between these worlds. The reason is simple. They are objects being distorted by darkness for the first time. There were dice in the card kingdom, but also in the TV world. Dice that Chris and Azrael used for games and lost in the living room. Their survival is the control group that proves why Rem's fate is so significant. If Ram proves the existence of a ghost fountain in the past, the next clue proves the danger never left. The end of chapter 3 gives us the final piece. When the Roaring Night takes Undyne, Susie chases them to the bunker. She finds it open, emanating dark particles, very similar to those coming from the fountains themselves. This happens before Chris creates a new fountain. The meaning is undeniable. Card Kingdom was not the first fountain to rise and endanger the balance. There was already an active, or at least residual fountain in the bunker, a place that has been locked and abandoned for years. The calamity Rousey speaks of didn't just begin, it has simply reawakened. We have demonstrated the existence of at least 2 other fountains outside of Rousey's narrative. This shatters the legend of millennia of balance. The balance wasn't just broken, it has been breaking and reforming in cycles, long before we fell into the closet. So, the real question emerges. If other fountains have existed, if the bunker was already active, and if Rame's fountain collapsed, what makes the Castletown fountain the main one? How is a fountain of pure darkness created? Chapter 3. The Grand Fountain. We've proven the existence of ghost fountains, which shatters the legend of a millennial balance. This brings us back to our central question, now armed with new context. What then is the Grand Fountain? At first glance, Castletown is different from anything else we've seen. It's remarkably small, almost intimate, but it's in constant evolution. It is the only dark world that changes. We watch as recruited darkners enjoy their new home, transforming buildings with their arrival and constructing rooms for themselves. Rousey calls it pure darkness, an ark, and we see that promise fulfilled, a refuge that expands to welcome refugees from other worlds. But it's inside the castle, the heart of this kingdom, where the real clues are revealed. The facade of a simple home gives way to an architectural map. In the main hall, we find Rousey's cauldron, but the real intrigue lies in the doors behind it. One with an up arrow, leading to the rooms, and another with a down arrow, leading to the cells. Both doors are flanked by a pair of wings identical to those we see in the Deltarune prophecy. But it's the middle door that stops us in our tracks. Since chapter 2, this door has remained sealed. Unlike the others, it bears a crown instead of an arrow. And above the door is the unmistakable symbol of a human soul. Most revealingly, it doesn't have one pair of wings, but 3. This symbolism isn't just decoration, it's a statement. The wing iconography is repeated throughout the castle, even on its exterior silhouette seen from afar. When we compare this to the image of the prophecy Ralsei shows us, we see 2 pairs of wings emerging from the castle, as if Castletown still needs to evolve by gaining that extra pair to be ready for the prophecy. Furthermore, the Deltarune symbol is visible above the castle, but with a major difference. There are no wings, only the other elements, as if telling us that this castle is part of Angel's Heaven. The relationship between the Grand Fountain and the prophecy is absolute. This castle is a container of secrets. The central door, with its crown and human soul, hides something intrinsically linked to the true meaning of Angel's Heaven. Speculation is inevitable. Is it a room Ralsei has prepared for the player, the wielder of the soul? Is it the final barrier protecting the fountain of pure darkness? Is it a throne room where the player will sit and rule? Or is it something more sinister, a command post for the final battle, or a gate imprisoning a relentless force? Only one thing is certain: the wings. The wings that adorn these doors, the castle, and the prophecy are a characteristic feature we've seen somewhere else. They aren't just a symbol of angels, they're a symbol of titans. And that's not the only element connecting them that we find in this world. Chapter 4. The Roaring. The Titan's wings are in Castletown's architecture, and the eyes are even closer. Before reaching the cliff where Mr. Society exiles himself, we find the enigmatic Unknown Zone. Many separated from Castletown due to its desolate atmosphere, but its connection is undeniable. To exit any dark world, we must cross a large door that marks its borders, and the only door here leads to Card Kingdom, sealing itself after the fountain is closed. This place is undoubtedly part of the Grand Fountain, and it's a zone filled with hole-ridden walls from which the same dark substance as the Titans emanates. Eye symbols cover the walls, all leading us to a single puzzle. The instructions are a prophecy in themselves. The solution is to darken all 3 eyes. A simple riddle, yes, but its symbolism is chilling. It will be necessary to enter eternal darkness, the darkness brought by the roaring. To see the way. The evidence is forensic. The iconography of the calamity, the Titan's wings, and their darkened eyes are not just warnings, they are the very foundations of Castletown. This leads to an inevitable conclusion. The Grand Fountain we know is not one that has endured for millennia. Ralsei's legend falls apart. The legend doesn't predict the future. It's a memory. It's a story of a past event doomed to repeat for eternity, in an endless cycle. A cycle in which, after a period of balance, the world is endangered and heroes answer the call. This means the roaring has already happened. Darkness has already covered the world once. Previous theories have proposed that Des, Sham, and Azrael were the heroes of that prior prophecy. As the legend says, balance returned but only after a great sacrifice. That sacrifice was the loss of Des, condemned to remain in eternal darkness. The price was the destruction of their Grand Fountain, their castle town, and all the recruits they had gathered. The Grand Fountain
calls himself the magician.
Is not the original. It is the dark world.
So he played the part of
the prophecy was fulfilled,
Ralsei,
created by the person with the most determination in Hometown to restore balance. That's why this new fountain already incorporates elements of the Titans and the prophecy. It was born from their ashes. And this is where the true horror of the plot is revealed. If the prophecy occurs in millennial cycles, why is it happening again so soon? The answer, once again, is Des. The Roaring Knight's plan, and perhaps that of others in Hometown, is not to unleash the apocalypse out of pure malice. It's a desperate attempt to force the cycle. They want to bring back that darkness, not to destroy the world, but to rescue Des and restore balance for another millennium. Think about it. The prophecy speaks of the darkness that will cover the world, a single path. This sacrifice could have been the destruction of the previous hero's Castletown, perhaps creating a Titan from the fountain of pure darkness infused with the essence of all darkness to confront the other Titans of the Roaring. Angel's Heaven could be Castletown materialized as a Titan. Or maybe they had to close that fountain to restore balance. Whatever the case, the sacrifice is great, and the detail that complements this is the hint that Susie has attitudes very similar to Des. If Susie promised to avoid the prophecy's sacrifice, Des could have reached the same conclusion. Instead of sacrificing her friends, she sacrificed herself, stepping into the darkness. However, her attempt failed. The Grand Fountain of the past was sacrificed anyway. That's why this Grand Fountain already had the appearance of an inhabited town, with empty shops and buildings. They are the memories of the previous recruits, the phantom pain of what once was. This new fountain was created after the prophecy ended, but it was created with the intent of making the roaring happen again. Ralsei, the sole inhabitant, the supposed prince, armed with all the information of the prophecy, seems to have the purpose of ensuring the prophecy is fulfilled again, restoring balance once more. This time, they are preparing everything to accelerate the prophecy's cycle, forcing the arrival of a human soul capable of sealing a new roaring. That's why the door with the human soul has been there from the beginning. It's not just a mystery, it's the centerpiece of the mechanism. It's the barrier that keeps death locked away, a barrier that only a human soul can break. The question now is for you. Who do you think created this cyclical Grand Fountain? Is Ralsei a pawn of the prophecy or its puppet master? And what exactly is hiding behind the door with the human soul? Leave all your theories down below in the comments. I always read them.
Oh, the memory tree. 104 views. Let's give him a view, bruh.
My name is Ben, and today I want to talk about something I haven't seen a lot of people talk about, if any. So, I took it upon myself to be...
We all just gotta start something. Let's just give it, let's just listen.
Hello there.
Let's listen.
My name is Ben, and today
I don't know, the audio's fucked up on his shit.
I haven't
but
seen
you
a
know,
lot of
we all
people
young out
talk
here.
about, if any.
Everybody started somewhere.
So, I took it upon myself to be the first one to share something that I think is kinda overlooked in Deltarune. First of all, I would like to say that this is my first video here on YouTube, so sorry in advance for the bad quality audio. Maybe if this works I'll buy a microphone someday, but until then it's just me and my phone. So, without further ado, let's get started. Have you found every egg in Deltarune? I mean, after the new patch, things regarding the eggs have become very interesting, to say at least. But I'm not here to talk about friend. Gosh, I'm not even here to talk about the eggs, nor the Forgotten Man, but something else. Why in the world is my favorite song from the entire game hidden here? Why does Scarlet Forest play here? I mean, why is the tree from the egg rooms the same from an entire area of chapter 1? Have you ever stopped to think about that? I think it's strange. Well, over the years, one of the most accepted theories or hypotheses around the eggs is that they represent some form of trauma that Grace experienced. Now with the Mew dialogue, we are not sure about that. But the thing is that I think the sentiment behind that theory still holds true, but not in the eggs, in the trees. You heard me. I think that the trees, not the eggs, are a representation of whatever happened to Grishin that day. I mean, there's evidence for that.
I guess that makes sense.
Of course, there's the egg rooms. In chapter 2, the way you find it is thanks to a graffiti in a wall that depicts a tree and reads the room in between. In chapter 3, chapter 3 is very convoluted, but I will return to it later. I promise it's very interesting. You'll see. Now in chapter 4, when you enter the clinic, I think it's the place, the door that leads to the therapy session of Chris has a 3 symbol. And even if you missed it, the dialogue inside depicts Chris making a drawing about what happened to them. And a drawing that then is covered with a tree. Oh, and by the way, in that same room when you find the egg, there is the Roots prophecy panel, you know, the one that shows the house in between the 2 trees, and there's also an organic that tells us about the tale of hell and the poor children that went into the forest. So, I think that trees hold significance to something that we don't know yet. So then, isn't it weird that the asset that's used for the egg rooms is the same that was used in a previous area? Well, I think that's the wrong mindset. I think it's actually the other way around. Let's look back to chapter 1 for a minute. Man, I loved chapter 1. It actually used to be my favorite chapter before chapter 4. And yeah, I know it doesn't hold up to modern Deltarune standards. The graphics, the length, I know. But let me tell ya, when the Survey Program came around 8 years ago, this was peak. It was like Undertale, but a little more serious. More like a traditional RPG, with a prophecy, with the heroes, a dark world of fantasy. To me, chapter 1 was the selling point for Deltarune, not 2, which was the case for a majority of people. I even preferred chapter 1 to chapter 2. So imagine how happy I was after finding the last egg. Scarlet Forest started to play, and man, it was so good. But then I started to think about it and asked myself, why? And I did what every Deltarune fan does when looking into something weird. I went to YouTube, but I found that nobody was talking about why that song, why that tree. So I started to think myself, and it started to make sense. Scarlet Forest, the area from chapter 1, is not the original place of that tree. Instead, the area formed from the trees from the egg rooms. The same trees that represent the traumatic experience that happened to Chris Dreamer. Now stay with me for a second, okay? Let's revisit the Cloud Kingdom, the first Dark World. After closing the fountain, you get to see the unused classroom, right? And if you pay attention, you can see the items that were transformed by the darkness. You can see the checkerboard, you can see the pawns, the cards, you can even see the charm plushie. You can also see a purple carpet, I think that's supposed to be the Field of Hopes and
I'm
Dreams.
listening.
That's supposed to be the card castle. But where is Scarlet Forest? There is nothing there that could resemble that red area. So what's going on? I think it's one of those cases where something in a dark world is not based around a real-life object, but a more abstract concept. In chapters 3 and 4, we learn that a dark world is a new interpretation of your surroundings when it gets darker than dark. Also, that the way that the dark world takes shape depends on the mind of the one who opened the fountain. What I'm saying is that the entire Scarlet Forest is based around a memory, and that's the traumatic memory of what happened on that fateful day. Thanks, Oscar, for the bake posting. But still, now, for that to work, the one who made the fountain must know about the incident, right? It has to be something traumatic for them. Because